I'm Joy Vernon. I'm the organizer for the Greater Seattle Astrology Tarot Reiki Meetup, and we are here today to talk about Virgo and the tarot, the related tarot cards for the three Virgan decans, the 8, 9, and 10 of Pentacles, and talk about the decanic images that are traditional for this sign. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is John Allen. I'm the organizer of Denver Tarot Geeks and also Denver Tarot Meetup. That's the more generalized tarot group that we have here in Denver. I guess I could also say I've been working with Joy on a number of these different presentations for quite a number of years now. And we keep on coming up with something new each time, which is really worthwhile. Well, without any further ado, we might as well just launch straight into the imagery. I think most everyone here, I think, has attended these sessions before, so they probably know what to expect, but I'll just go ahead and just do a quick summarization anyway. What we're going to do is we're going to be exploring the magical images of the decans. Each will be focusing on or looking at 6 different authors, 6 different descriptions of each image for the decan, and we will focus on one of them to compare with the card. We will also have an opportunity to do some scrying meditation where we focus on or just generally keep in mind the images that we've seen and then see if we can come up with our own image. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So our first decan is ruled by the sun and corresponds with the esoteric title of Lord of Prudence. And this decan is generally about witnessing the process of creation with humility and patience and being able to thus perceive its secrets. It teaches the value of prudence, which is of course, the esoteric title of the prudence of postponing the fruit until it is ripe. It really hammers home the idea that you really need to allow natural processes to take their course before anything really satisfactory happens. But being as this is an ascendant decan, this is it shares a bit of a qualities with cardinal signs in that they are, kind of kickstarting the process in the beginning. And in here, the process starts with the laying bare of the potentialities of prima materia, which is prime matter, is the formless goo that all material things emerge from. So we can use this decan personally to cultivate patience and diligence and humble competence, as opposed to the more bombastic competence of Leo. We have more of an internalized and not so showy thing with Virgo. So we'll go ahead and launch into our first batch of images. Again, we'll be doing 6 from different time periods and different cultures, and we'll do a comparison contrast a little later. So our first author is Abraham Ibn Ezra, and his image, he describes a maiden wrapped in a cloak, wearing worn out clothes, with a jug in her hand, and she stands in myrtle, and she wants to go to her father's house. What I didn't mention before was when I will start with the written descriptions of the images, and then we'll allow you a few moments to visualize this description in your mind, and then we'll show you an AI image of that with what AI made of these descriptions. So we'll give you a moment to visualize this first image, and then we'll show you the AI. Our next author, the next description comes from the Picatrix, a beautiful girl covered over with a woolen sheet and holding in her hand a pomegranate. And this is a face of sowing, of plowing, of the making of trees to sprout, of gathering bunches of grapes and the good life. Our third description comes from Heinrich Agrippa. In the first face of Virgo ascendeth the figure of a good maiden, and a man casting seeds. It signifieth getting of wealth, ordering of diet, plowing, sowing, and peopling. Next description comes from Giordano Bruno. The first face is a maiden crowned with flowers and wearing green, flowing garments. A man scatters flowers and leafy branches before her. Our next description comes from Aleister Crowley, a virgin clad in linen with an apple or a pomegranate. And our last image comes from Austin Coppock, a tree bearing fruit. So now comes our meditation exercise. We're going to keep these 6 images up on the periphery of this empty space that we're going to use to focus our attention on. And you can either focus on the black part of it, or you can also allow the images on either side to influence what you see. So we'll give you a few moments to do that. And with that, we'd like to open the group back in for discussion, so we can either discuss what we experienced or what our impressions are of these images here and how they might relate to this decan. And already I can definitely see a very strong virgin theme in all of these. So we're definitely, starting the decan out very appropriately with that symbol.
One of the things that came to mind, and I think it was something you had said in the introduction and made some kind of reference to harvest time period, waiting for things to be ripe. So we are getting into harvest time periods now. But there's a lot of seeds and sowing because pomegranates the fruit is all seeds, and apples are also kind of they're known for their seeds, but that cool thing where you cut a apple in half horizontally and you get that star pattern just brings out the fruit as things that contain seeds. Virgin has not been seeded yet in our modern way of looking at it. But so but then what occurred to me as I was kind of pondering through all of those things is, well, wait, but it's September. Or this decan, the first decan of Virgo is at the end of August, last 10 days or so of August. But I mean, it's fall. And so that occurred to me that that's going to be more like, and I don't know anything about agriculture, so I don't know when people plant like winter wheat, if that gets planted this time of year. I would assume so, because Virgo holds that sheath of wheat. But they're talking about planting crops that are going to make it through the winter, and be ready to give us something to eat, once the during the times that are hardest and before the more general growing season starts. So there's something about that I think is really, I often think of Virgo, especially as Mercury ruled, as being strategic. And I think I talked about that somewhere, and probably not in this group because we haven't gotten there yet, but somewhere I talked about particularly the Ten of Coins and Virgo in the ruling the third decan of Mercury ruling the third decan of Virgo. There's a lot of strategic energy in Mercury, I think. And so the idea of what can we do now that is going to ensure success later on. And that's kind of the thing that was coming through for me. Anybody else either see any images during your scrying or have any comments on um, any of the images we've got up now, or just thoughts on this decan generally?
I think these are all very beautiful images, and I felt very connected to the one with Aleister Crowley, the girl in linen holding the pomegranate, and the one that's going home to her father. I just see these as like beautiful symbols of like I don't know. I don't know if innocence is the right word, but just like pure, like beautiful, like images of like what kind of represents this beginning of Virgo season. So um when I closed my eyes and thought about this, these images came more to my mind. And I also just saw a lot of nature that was kind of like just changing as well. I guess like a shift in our season. So I think this is what came to my mind. Yeah.
Nice, good. Anybody else?
I don't know if that I had like a big reflection, but I'm thinking a lot about this because this is actually in tropical. My sun placement is here. So I always kind of look at this card and go, But I think it's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, end of August isn't really fall, but there is some harvesting that's happened already, right? And kind of just being on the edge of that. But I definitely think like the presentation of the fruit in some of these images, some of it's still on the trees, some of it's being presented. So it's the promise of the bounty and the promise of the future fertility and the promise of the just the nourishment is what's coming up for me.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, pomegranates, I mean, I don't know when they're ripe particularly, but I know that they're kind of like a New Year's Day kind of thing that you do. And apples, we get this like farm box type of thing, and they had these apples that I hadn't heard of on the last one. It's too early for apples, right? But they had apples in it and they were kind of pricey, but the picture looked so good. So I ordered some of them and they did not look like the picture. And I was really disappointed and they didn't taste that great either. So it's kind of like don't buy apples at this time of the year. I mean, we get so many things imported from other places that a lot of times you can find good fruit year round. But if you think about what are the orchards offering now? Are they offering you apples yet? In a farm box, it should have been. I should have been getting something that was ripe, so I was not very happy. But yeah, it's always kind of like, yeah, this might be kind of early for apples. So maybe that's part of the. Maybe that's part of what this Decan is about, and what Austin said about waiting for things to be ripe. It's like, you know, there's a, yeah, I think maybe Elizabeth, you said a promise or something. There's that promise of something coming, but yeah, these things aren't necessarily ready to go yet. Um,
And I just looked it up and it looks like pomegranate is like late fall
okay, yeah,
harvest and apples I always associate with the fall season. Um, which is interesting, yeah, because there's other things that we would have been harvesting at this point, right? Like you've already had berries and you've already had like the summer crops.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then, and I know this is just probably the part of the world that a lot of the symbolism comes from, but I always have, the story of Persephone
yeah.
evoked whenever we talk about pomegranates and just the fact that this is coming from so much conversation around the term virgin, which we know meant slightly different things, but either way I think it was associated with like there's like an innocence that's associated with it for me, which makes sense as like a first decan of anything, honestly. But yeah, I like that the waiting. um I am curious in the first description though, not the image so much, but she wants to go to her father's house. Does anyone have thoughts on the Ibn Ezra's take? What does that mean?
This is really random, so I don't think it's a good example, but I'll share it. This decan really reminds me, this decan is associated with the Eight of Pentacles, but it reminds me much more of the Nine of Pentacles. And one of my students told me that in the Nine of Pentacles, the reason the woman is doing so well is because she's living in her father's house and he's paying for everything. And I was just like, that is the most sexist interpretation I've ever heard. That the only reason she's doing well is because her daddy takes care of her. It's like, no, I don't think so. But that is what came to mind for me. So the wanting to go to our father's house, I can't say that I explored it more deeply. I agree about it feeling like the Nine of Pentacles, yeah. And then the tree with ripe fruit feels more like the Seven of Pentacles. It's like I don't see any Eight of Pentacles in here, but we're not to that point yet where we compare it to the card. But yeah, it feels like the seven and the nine, but not any eight. Does anybody else have any idea so that we can open this up more about, because Gabrielle, you thought that you liked that idea of going to her father's house. What did it mean to you?
Um, I think I think I just saw, how do I explain? I don't know why this came to my mind. I think I thought of this because I just thought it was kind of sweet or beautiful, maybe that she had, you know, like a good foundation for her. I mean, of course, I don't really know the history of this, card or the meaning of it all entirely, but I think it can just represent like, um, you know, that she was in like if we think about it positively, that she had a good foundation of like a parental figure and that she was going back home, maybe during a time when she was, growing or developing as a person. I try to think of it in like a good way, although I can see how it can be like with what you said earlier, like it can be sexist with like, she developed well and she did good as a person because she had a father who was able to provide. As we all know, there's plenty of women who can, do this without that. Um, but I just see it as like kind of like I don't know. I just see it as like very like simple and beautiful, I guess. So,
Well, and going back to some more astrological interpretations that may or may not really be relevant. The thing, as you were talking, the thing that came to mind for me was that she was going to her father because he was ill. Because the sixth house, again, used in the natural order of the zodiac, which I know is like really stretching it, but that's associated with health. And so maybe there was the need to return to him to help him or to take care of him because all of those routines, cleaning and things like that end up going into that sixth house. That's, I think it's a bit of a stretch, but
that's
at
a
least
good
it makes
point.
sense.
That makes sense. I didn't really consider that, and I can see how that would be tied to um Virgo because I think it depicts femininity in a way. And, if we think about like some of the ways in which society has like focused on like roles of what women do, it can be to, do these things you described, like kind of like taking care, cleaning, and this card or not card, this image probably represents this in a way where she's going back home to, like if we think about it being tied to the sixth house with what you said, where her father may be sick, then I can definitely see that. Um, but yeah.
I think we can move on to our card comparison
Okay,
now.
great.
And so what we do each month is we select a random author and compare the image that they describe to the classic version of the small cards. In this case, we're using Rider-Waite-Smith as our example. And for this month, we're going to look at the Picatrix images. So we'll go and show you a Picatrix image with the image of the Eight of Pentacles.
Oh, and I do want to point, like John made it clear that we were just looking at Rider-Waite-Smith, but I said that Decan reminded me of the Seven of Pentacles and the Nine of Pentacles, but not the eight. But Crowley's Eight of Pentacles does have a tree hanging with eight spherical fruits. So it does relate to the Eight of Pentacles when you're looking at the Crowley card.
Now, Crowley's Eight of Pentacles is more like the Rider-Waite-Smith Seven of Pentacles. So I don't know, maybe there's a lot of overlap here that we're discovering.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always really, held the contention that at least when you're talking about astrology and the various uh, segments of space that and time, that it's more of a continuum. It's not like, when a planet crosses the border from Taurus to Gemini, then it immediately just switches there. And I think the closer that a planet comes to a sign, whether it starts to absorb more of that energy until it actually goes and then is in that sign proper.
That's interesting to just kind of think about the liminality of things. And one of the things that's coming to mind for me with this, because this time of year, and we were talking about what do you harvest this time of year? And I was thinking, I mean, we've got, in terms of the pagan wheel of the year, Lunasa would have been at the beginning of August, and that's celebrated with bread so I think maybe some grains are started to be harvested kind of at this time. But the other thing is that, yeah, it doesn't seem too much like a harvest time because there's still so much summer left. And again, that I'm speaking of somebody that's always lived in North America and used to thinking of agricultural seasons that way. But at this point, it seems like there's still tons of summer left. September is usually a pretty nice month. Even October can, although in some parts that I've lived in, we might get our first snowfall in September. Like here in the Pacific Northwest, October is usually gorgeous. And we really get the rain starting in earnest in November. And so there's, I guess, and where I'm getting with this is like, where's that cutoff of, okay, if you don't have, all of your plans for how to get through the winter, if you don't have those in place, you need to, and it's that, cricket and what is the grasshopper and the ant or some such fable where one just plays and fiddles all the time, the grasshopper does, and then the ant is busy working all the time. I don't even remember the result. I'm sure that the one that is busy working does well and the one that played doesn't do well. Because that's the moral implication. But yeah, it's kind of, I mean, this idea of, I mean, I'm in trouble, but we're talking about a Mercury ruled sign, and I've got Mercury in Pisces, so it's going to bring out that part of me. I'm not normally very linear, and I'm particularly not linear right now. Trying to navigate that pleasure and enjoyment of a time that is safe and protected and easy, and anticipate the coming of a difficult time, and planning for it, preparing for it, the word that I used before, strategizing for it. But that ties into me with Persephone and the pomegranate, that she was just out in the Vale of Enna, right? Picking flowers and just being a kid with her other girlfriends. And then she, Hades or Pluto or whatever comes up and is, coach and black horses with red eyes or something like very frightening, and kidnaps her and takes her down through this crack in the earth down into the underworld. And so that's not, the liminality of that is very abrupt. It's a very sharp shift from, oh, I'm just going to gather flowers and have fun out in the sun with my friends, to, oh no, I've been kidnapped and taken down into the underworld. And so maybe there's even a certain amount of because this is what brings on winter, symbolically, as her mother, Ceres, the goddess of the grain, starts to mourn the loss of her child. And so maybe this is more about, and Pluto or Hades is known for storing wealth, and having stores of gold and jewels and things like that, which you find under the earth. And so maybe all of that is I mean, it makes perfect sense that it's, now that I think about it, I'm like, well, why wouldn't it be? It's just a symbol. It's just a metaphor for the seasonal changes. somebody says, you can say the Eight of Pentacles is also working and preparing for when it's the time of lesser supply. Yeah, 100%, 100%. Just like a harvesting grain or the worker ant. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly where I was trying to get to. Yeah.
And then there's that sense of meticulousness with that activity as well. It's like, kind of counting all of your ducks and making, to use another expression, making sure all your ducks are in a row before the winter settles in. And so you have the craftsman on the card, he's just chiseling away and he's not doing anything particularly, large, of grand scale. He's just doing a lot of little things and making sure that that they've got enough pentacles to last them for a while. And with I look at the image of the Virgin with the pomegranate, and I know for a minute, it's just like this is just purely speculative, but might just get the idea that that it's something that you have to like go and count all the seeds in the pomegranate, find out is something or not, and being that meticulous.
Yeah, and just as you started talking, something else popped up in the chat that aligns a lot with what you're saying. She says that makes a lot of sense with the images I'm used to for the Eight of Pentacles. Also, just because it's Virgo, the scrutiny and the checking of the details. So 100% there too. The thing that's coming to mind for me now is Cinderella, just because she is I mean, she has to clean. That's her job, being the rejected, true daughter of the father. And it's the stepsisters and the stepmother that kind of take over, and she's relegated to cleaning. But in the fairy tale version, I don't know if it's in the, my mom wouldn't let me watch Walt Disney movies when I was a kid, so I don't know if it's in the movie or not. But there's all these things where she has to pick up a lot of grain that's spilled or sort through grain. Like a bunch of grains are piled together and she has to sort through them and sort them back into the proper piles of what they are, something like that. And that's when the birds and come and help her or something like that. If I remember correctly. So yeah, that whole thing is very Virgoan, sorting out the details and organizing things and making sure, checking all the stores, making sure they're full. Yeah.
I see the same thing with Snow White. She's always picking fruit and in nature, and she has all these obligations to the kingdom, and she cleans. She just embodies like femininity. Not saying that is what it is, but for like, you know, for this discussion, I think she really shows this as well. Um, and she just really was a very pure character. I guess she seemed very like innocent, and then going back to what you said when, falling into the underworld and she changed very quickly her mindset and who she was when she ran away to the forest and she, experienced, these very dark figures and someone, coming after her. And I'm sure they're, even though I don't know, I read the Grimm tale and I watched the Disney one too, so of course they need to like make it lighter, but it was a lot darker in the Grimm fairy tales where I believe, and I could be wrong, that she might have like had some man after her to like hurt her.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a huntsman that was sent after her to carve out her heart.
right, like to carve out her heart. So I think she, had to, she had all this happen to her and she just, was faced with the reality of like what it was for her to be a woman and her role. Um, so, Yeah, I see Virgo in this character. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And really interesting that we're finding this correlation to a variety of fairy tales and female-centered stories in terms of the uh, that kind of maturity um into kind of puberty and a young womanhood and the amount of change that especially in older time periods that your life goes through there in terms of sexuality, in terms of getting married, in terms of having to take on an adult's role in life and fulfill certain duties. Um, and the of course, the fairy tales deal a lot more with emotional components such as jealousy and things like that. Because in Snow White, it's the queen who's jealous of her for being more beautiful than her, and so she um, sends a huntsman or whatever to kill her, and he does chase her into the wood, but he finds a wild boar and cuts out its heart and takes that back to the queen. Um, but then when she finds the dwarves, she still has to cook and clean and stuff, right? And then she ends up, and then the queen sends out the apple that's red on one side and green on the other, and the green side will kill her, whatever, or hurt her, and she ends up in the glass coffin and until the prince comes and rescues her. All this fairy tales end up with a woman asleep until a man comes and rescues her. I like them.
Yeah.
I like them up until that point. It's like seriously.
Like, why go through all that? And then
Yeah, it's like she did all of this cool work to individuate herself and to grow up and to become autonomous, and then she only ends up in this stupid glass coffin. But I mean, I
Well,
think
that idea
they
of
were written
toil,
by men. Yes. Sorry, Jen?
well, the idea of toil comes in with the second decan as well. So there's an emphasis on that.
Okay, okay, yeah.
And actually, I could talk more about that if we go ahead and move on to our next decan. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. So our second decan here is ruled by Venus, Lord of material gain, and of course, it has that classic image of the woman in the garden, surrounded by opulence. And the focus here is on the ongoing shaping and refining of that prima materia. I think, the first decan was basically mostly observing and learning. And this is where the actual direct participation in the process happens. And in order to do that, spirit encases itself in matter or surrounds itself with matter. It becomes more dense in order for it to have some effectiveness in the material world and to oversee its processes and to be able to apply those processes to oneself. So what usually is the resultant of all this work is that you get a very fine, beautiful finished product, the kind of product that, say, Hephaestus would make, the craftsman of Mount Olympus, who was, made some very, very beautiful things, but he was a particularly not so good looking character. So you can use this particular decan to reap the benefits of work and planning for their increase. Again, we'll go ahead and take a look at our next batch of images. Our first image, again from Ibn Ezra. A black man, all covered in hair. On him are three garments, one of leather, the second of silk, and the third is a red mantle, and in his hand an inkwell in order to reckon. Our next image from Picatrix, a man of beautiful color, dressed in leather, and upon the vestment of leather, another vestment of iron. And this is the face of petition, of desires, and of wealth, of tribute, and the denying of things that are just. Next, we have Agrippa's description. In the second face ascendeth a black man covered in a skin, and a man having a bush of hair, holding a bag. They signify gain, scraping together of wealth, and covetousness. Next, Bruno's description. In the second face is a black man wearing leather with a purse in his hand. He wears his cloak with the hood thrown back. Mr. Crowley's description. Tall, fair, large man. With him a woman holding a large black oil jar. And lastly, we have Kopek's description of the hammer and the anvil. now we'll go through our scrying exercise again, focusing on the blank space with the images in our periphery. And we'll give you a few moments for that. And again, once again, we'll open it up for discussion. We can discuss the images or our meditation. There's a lot of leather in this segment. I don't know if it has anything to do with machismo or anything like that, but there's also a lot of male imagery, and the leather, I believe, is ruled by Saturn, which is, I believe, the ruler of this decan in triplicity. I mean, even in the one where in Agrippa's image, it's wearing a skin, and there's a lot of layers of clothing being worn, indicating that sense of concealment that that spirit gains when it wraps itself inside matter. So it conceals and it fortifies itself, but it also hides itself.
Yeah, I remember when we were prepping, it was like all of the first decan images are women, which you usually think of coming up the most often with Venus or Moon. Um, uh, well, they haven't been as consistent as I would have expected, Venus or Moon ruled decans, but and the first decan and triplicity system would have been ruled by Mercury, and was Sun in the Chaldean order. So the Saturn, I think the Saturnian themes come out pretty nicely with this one, and that leather or skin. I mean, I usually hear Saturn as a ruler of skin on our body because it's the outer protective layer of the body. Although I also have heard skin assigned to Jupiter as the largest organ in the body, but I think most people assign it to Saturn. So the idea of Saturn as protection.
Yeah, that's what Rex Bills has in his. His skin is primarily ruled by Saturn. Although it does have an entry here, I mean, it also attributes it to Capricorn, Libra, and Venus.
Oh, interesting. Hmm.
I don't know,
Well,
maybe,
it needs to be moisturized. It
or maybe
seems
it's, or maybe it appeals to, you know, the sensual aspect of skin. You know, it's like when it's touched and what you feel through all the, you know, all the nerves and everything.
yeah, and beauty. They say beauty's only skin deep. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that for sure.
And see how these beautiful material leather kind of combines with love actually, because I think placements with Virgo, Libra tend to, not saying they're more materialistic, but they really appreciate this in a way. I can see how within these images, love is kind of shown through work, or it's like an act of service. I see some kind of like action within all these images to through material and to produce like these materials, whether it is for spouse, family, or um like your community. I can see how um this is also tied to Venus, like some form of like work or service, which created these um you know this clothing, the leather, the handbags, the um what is it that she's holding? Maybe this is something he gave to her or created for her. So this like vase. So um I can see how this is tied to Venus. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and she's holding an oil jar, so oil for lamps or something probably. I'm not sure.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Oh,
again
go
with
ahead,
that,
John.
yeah, again with that carryover with a lot of this stuff too, like, you know, oil or olive oil does show up in the third decan a bit. And I think I might have seen other descriptions of olive oil. Um, so maybe not, you know, not the industrial type, it may not be.
Right, right. Yeah. And I was thinking, well, olive oil, I see olives corresponding to the sun a lot, but I've also heard of olives corresponding to Venus. And so that might be um a correlation as well. And I think we've got the bag, the purse, we've got the inkwell for reckoning, um the man of beautiful color dressed in leather, his that says this is a face of, I pulled up my handout. The handout, I put the link to the handout much earlier in our chat. So if you didn't see it, scroll back and you'll find it. But it says it was a face of petitions, requests, and gain, tribute, and denying justice, which always Picatrix always throws in something. Picatrix is a study in contrast. Always throws in something that's like, what? It sounds really good, but denying justice is not good. But the idea of increase, of having, of using your inkwell to balance your books at the end of the month, you know, of petitions and gain, of having a purse, of having a bag that is full. You know, these are, you know, Venus can be um, material and appreciative of nice things, as Gabrielle said, and that kind of fits throughout a variety of the images that we're looking at. I think one of the reasons, I think sometimes when we see a lot of contrasts in the descriptions, it can be because Venus is in fall in Virgo because it's exalted in Pisces. And so it is considered weakened here. Virgo is a little too mundane. It's, I mean, again, kind of that Cinderella story, although from we're into the next decan, but that kind of fall from her rightful place into a place where she has to make more attention to detail and take care of little things that aren't really her normal domain. And turn her attention away from her luxury and back to just like balancing the books and seeing if she can afford her normal luxury this month. So that might trigger some things in people as you think about this one too.
Yeah, I mean, was noticing that so the leather is mentioned several times, but it's combined with things in several of these, right? So like, and this is where I always want to do like the historical deep dive, right? But my understanding is during the medieval period when these would have been getting written, leather was really important, and it was like used for really practical things, but it was also like it didn't necessarily denote social status, right? But like mixing with the silk, that kind of infers to me this is somebody who, you know, has a status, right? That maybe they had access. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then we combine it with the iron, which is like very military, you know, that sounds like combat to me. And yeah, I mean, just all of the bags and all of there's like this sense of gains that had to be worked for, like either like leveling up, you know, I'm thinking like maybe that first guy didn't start off so well off, but now he's worked and he's accumulated his wealth, and now he has, you know, upgraded his garments, and now he has a lot that he has to account for, because which I think is very Nine of Pentacles to me, is like, yeah, I have the things, but now I have to do things with the things. I have to be responsible for the things. Yeah, and then maybe the iron one is giving me like plunders of, you know, like I went out and plundered and now I came back with loot. But basically there's like bounty, but it had to be worked for, and now it has to be managed or protected from like which makes sense, because if you're getting into the harvest season, you have the bounty, but if you just let the fruit fall to the ground and you don't collect it and you don't store it properly and all of that kind of stuff, then, you know, it's going to rot or the animals will eat it, and all that work will have been for nothing. So that's what it's really giving for me, is like, you have to work for it. It's there and it's time to benefit from it. But that doesn't mean that, like, now you have new problems, right? You have new responsibilities to now manage this, instead of the like planting or the going out on the journey. It's like, now how do you manage and protect that?
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that matches a lot with the card and to a certain degree and with our images that we're seeing here. I guess I want to just bring up briefly, because we had a discussion last month. We had Black characters last month, and I think there's Black characters coming up again next month. And it's always a little bit weird, when you are dealing with these much older verbal descriptions and trying to kind of manage the types of racism that were present at the time, and then also how we're receiving them. through our own lens and limitations and prejudices. And last time there was a black man that was described as ugly. And I think it's just kind of reassuring that one of our black men this time is described, he's not even described as black, he's described as having beautiful color, which I think is nice. Also, just as a side note, I searched the document that we've been pulling these written descriptions from, and ugly is used twice. Once for the ugly black man, but then there's another one where there's no description of the person's race, color, or complexion, but they are described as ugly. So somebody had said, I'm just wondering if there's a white person described as ugly. And the answer is no, but there was just a character without reference to any color or complexion that was described as ugly. Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. It's complicated and, not being an expert on these topics and certainly not being a historical expert on how, on what this what racism was like in the 12th century or whatever. I'm confident that it was there. I think that that's part of what systemic racism is all about, is that there's always been a fear of what's different from you. And but we do have, and I think this is almost good, we do have a lot of representations of people of color in these descriptions. And I think that is, even if they often skew towards prejudicial and racist, I think there's plenty of examples that aren't. And I think it's great that there's examples for us to even talk about.
And I think actually the old symbolism of the color too. I mean, is just the color, oftentimes where I think, we were talked about a Saturnian influence in this particular deck and with the imagery. And, black is also associated with Saturn. There are characters in some of the descriptions, variously, they say like some of them have red skin, which, I mean, that's like red, not the stereotyped American, Native American skin tone, but actually the actual color red, or
Yeah.
some people are yellow,
Yep, there's a yellow one.
like I know in some of the older versions of the descriptions, there's things like that. So, I mean, it varies, but I think, there's some of these guys were thinking in terms more of it's probably a mixed area where they were thinking in terms of symbolism, but also, inevitably weaving in a lot of the cultural norms of the time, which could have, definitely have included some probably more extreme racism than we experience today. So it's a sticky subject, but sometimes a little worthwhile to work through the stickiness.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard, and I don't feel like I've got the right background to address it properly, but I think it's worth still bringing up.
Okay, we should probably move on to our card. And again, we'll go ahead and highlight the Picatrix image and compare that to the Nine of Pentacles. I kind of see this as just, in a way stating the same thing, but in two different languages. I think, the Picatrix image of the man in all of these heavy garments is I think probably considers himself safe in his own space, and probably about that. Um, I think, again, it was indicated earlier that, it was a matter of also, wealth being expressed, as, you have more and you're able to show more of it. And I think, that idea is also, I think, very implicit in the card, where it's like there's all this lavishness being displayed everywhere. And she herself is kind of enclosed as well. She's inside of a garden, and I believe, well, I can't tell if it's a walled garden or not, but
Yeah, it's usually I usually see it described as a walled garden and a lot of other cards depict it that way. I mean, there's grapevines there, so there's at the very least a what I don't know what it's called, but the thing that grapevines grow on, which is some kind of grid or fence or rail or something. But I usually do hear it described as being enclosed.
I can't remember which deck or we were talking about. There's something in a previous uh, session that we did with one of the previous decans,
I think it
which
was the last decan of Leo.
I think it was Cancer, because that was also had that. I think Austin Coppock had the image of the walled garden in this, I think, for the second decan that he
Yes.
assigned to.
Yep. Cancer 2, 3 of Cups, wall. Yeah, that had that walled garden one.
And I think
Okay.
decans, and that suggested that these items of luxury and opulence still, need to be protected in order to last. You can't just leave it out in the open and expect it to be the same.
It's really interesting because I mean, things go both ways, and that's that phrase denial of justice, which I think comes up in this Picatrix image, and and the idea of reckoning, and there's a certain amount of I would say I overall give kind of evaluation probably to Libra, but Virgo certainly is tallying things to determine how to evaluate it. Um, in the city that I live in, Burien, there is a lake, Lake Burien, that is publicly owned. The city owns it and manages it, but has no public access. The only way to get to the lake is via somebody's private home and private property. And the people that live around the lake are like weirdly protective of it and like, oh, we can't have public access because those people would ruin it. And it's hard to buy, like those people live there for generations and they just bequeath their home and their property to to their children or whatever. And so it's not like there's ever a place for sale on that lake. And yet at the same time, the rest of us are paying taxes that go to the city that is used to maintain the lake. And so that idea of, you have to wall it in order to protect it. And the whole what would happen if it wasn't enclosed, it would become ruined. Normally I would say, oh yeah, absolutely, that makes great sense because if I owned property, which I don't, I would probably have a fence up because I'm a private person and I have Cancer moon and Cancer rising. But on the other hand, like when I think of this lake here in Burien, it just like is so irritating. Not that I would. I mean, I can walk past it, and there is one point where I can see through a chain link fence and see the lake, but I can't get down there to it. I can't, dip my toe in the water or anything like that. And so it's really interesting. Somebody somebody says there appears to be the top of a brick wall behind her. Okay, I cannot see that much detail, so thank you for sharing that. And then somebody else says more money, more problems. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So yeah, just different perspectives on it. And the haves and the have-nots, and when you work hard to get something, how to protect that on the one hand, but if you have extra, shouldn't you share it? That both of those things can be simultaneously true and can lead to a lot of interesting decision making.
Cool. I mean, if we can, if you want to go ahead and let's do the last deck, and I think we might be able to squeeze it in the last 20 minutes.
Oh, thanks, John. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. I wouldn't want anything to be left behind.
Right.
So their third decan is ruled by Mercury in the Chaldean system, associated with the Lord of Wealth. And this is a cadent decan, which means it's taking on more of similar qualities as what mutable signs do, in which they are transitional. They're working to transition that energy from one sign to another. Here, I think we're coming to the end of the sign, and we're having a different kind of wrap up kind of scenario. And in this particular case, you were contemplating the inevitable fate of matter, which is that it grows to maturity, it becomes its goes to its full potential, and then it gradually dies and turns to dust. And considering the shifting tides of generation, which is the creation of matter, and corruption, which is the destruction of matter. And it reflects on the end of a material process and bids us to really just ask the question, what is valuable? What does constitute wealth and value in our eyes, considering that nothing is permanent? It makes clear the value of each irreplaceable moment, because then we discover it's like, well, again, if you're looking at the present moment, it's always in flux. We're not, experiencing the present as a static environment. It's always on the move. So, what I said a couple of minutes ago is gone. It only exists in memory now. Or at least hopefully it did. So it's a decan that is often used to come to terms with the ending of cycles, for the preservation of the wealth that has been accumulated, and ensuring good endings. So we'll go ahead and start our images. Ezra's image is a white woman who is self-laudatory. She is wearing a dyed mantle. Her hands are leprous, and she is praying to God. Next, with the Picatrix, we have a pale man of large body wrapped in a white linen cloth, and with him a woman holding in her hand black olive oil. I told you it was coming. Agrippa's description. In the face, in the third face ascendeth a white woman and deaf, or an old man leaning on a staff. I pretty much used this description in the AI as it was, and it gave me both options. Bruno's description, an old man supported by two walking staffs. He has uncombed hair hanging over his face. His beard is straggling and he is wearing dark brown and or dark gray garments. Broly's description is an old man leaning on a staff and wrapped in a mantle. And finally, Copic's image is simply the sarcophagus. And again, we'll show you our 6 images and we'll meditate on this decan and see what image comes to us. we'll go ahead and do our discussion. Well, this is a very different scenario than what we usually find in the Ten of Discs. There's a lot of images of infirmity and age. Again, it's like, a bit Saturnian. Although I think what is the triplicity ruler for this? I believe is Venus.
Yeah, it is. Which the color white is associated with Venus. One of the colors that's associated with her. And we have a couple white women and a pale man and some white linen garments and some white hair, so plenty of white.
Again, maybe that's another secret connection with the Virgin imagery of that white being a symbol of purity.
Yeah, and that brings back what we were talking about earlier, purity that is connected, but somehow um threatened by infirmity or debility of some kind. Of course, Mercury, if it was Venus in the triplicity system, again, she would be in her fall in Virgo, but Mercury in the Chaldean system is both rules and is exalted in Virgo. So you would expect to see, well, I never expect anything with these Decan images. They're all pretty crazy. But you might expect to see something a little more positive. I do feel, and a lot of people get really up in like huge discussions over that. Going back, I know this is not our decan, but going back again to the Nine of Pentacles, there's that snail on the ground. Everybody's got like their theory of what it means, and I've certainly heard ones that I think are ridiculous and ones that are fascinating and things like that. But the bottom line is that a snail is harmful to a garden. It tends to eat the plants and things like that. And so there's been an ongoing, I don't know if this is a Virgo thing or what, but there's an ongoing feeling of threat in this sign and I do know that Mercury ruled signs tend to have a lot of anxiety, or strong placements in a Mercury ruled sign or a Mercury placement in a Mercury ruled sign. It tends to bring out anxiety and worry. And that feeling of ongoing on high alert for a threat. And we're seeing that in these decans. It's just like this woman, she's praying to God, but she's leprous. The other white woman was deaf. Like the pale man is wrapped in linen, which AI chose to make him like a mummy. It's just kind of like, interesting. We've got the old man that has to lean on two walking sticks. So somebody says Mercury, Hermes as the conductor of souls to Hades. Nice, nice, nice. Mercury associations with the word and. This set of images is making me think of you can't take it with you, or the sense that you've built all this, but now what? Oh, good, good. Ties back into my associations with legacy building in this card. Yeah, really, really nice interpretation there. Really hits it exactly where I think all of this is getting to. This threat of having it but losing it. Having it but it'll go rotten. Trying to keep and stockpile something that maybe would be better to be shared.
Yeah, I was just to add on to that, I was thinking about with these images, the story of Scrooge in A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like the like all the hoarding. I mean, I guess you don't have to be a jerk to accumulate value, but like the whole like I feel like this card is that, or these images is that lesson of you've got all this, but without that connection to other people or for someone else to benefit from it or to share with, like what's the point, right?
Yeah, I love that because that story is I mean, it's a morality play on the one hand, but it really does, that threat really does create that kind of miserly quality. And yet, it is the ghost of Christmas future that's like, you're gonna die and be lonely in your death, and nobody's gonna come visit your grave or anything like that. It's that threat that actually changes his character so that he becomes generous and friendly. So yeah, it's like we hold on to things because we're scared we're going to lose them, and yet at the same time, again, and the Mercury things, like you said, and for Mercury things, we hold on to them because we might lose them. And it's like, oh no, if I hold on to everything and don't share, I'm going to lose something more important. So yeah, really nice. Really, really nice.
Or now I'm thinking about, do you know the Magic Penny song? The like,
Oh yeah, give
you
it.
know, if you hold it tight, then you don't have any, lend it, spend it, you have something. That's
Yeah,
coming up for
yeah.
me too.
I've heard that song. Yeah, that's a great one.
Also, the images of the elderly men with staffs, I mean, it definitely calls to mind the Hermit card, which again also is associated with the sign of Virgo. So we have that connection there too. I mean, that little dimension.
Yeah, that's really good. And Elizabeth amended her previous comment in the chat and added, because otherwise I would definitely say Saturn, just looking at these, and in the Golden Dawn system, the Hermit is Virgo, but in older iconography, he often holds either two crutches or he holds a hourglass, and those are Saturnian image. That is Saturnian imagery. So yeah, even though Saturn's not the ruler in any of the systems, well, I don't know. Then Austin has some additional systems that he lists, but yeah, definitely seeing that um, all of those different references kind of layering on top of each other. You want to go to the card?
Okay, so we have the Picatrix image again of the mummy, and we compare that to the Ten of Pentacles.
And this is the
I
one
had
that
some
I
other
was,
images of that. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead and say what you were saying.
It's not really all that important. I was just, commenting on the fact that I have, other iterations of this image, and some of them do have just, I think, the idea was to make sure to get that idea that this is, the end of the cycle, and this is like, preparing for or a corpse for death, basically, or burial.
Oh, so the oil is like a one of those anointing oils that you use on a dead body. That's, oh, interesting. Huh. Hmm. Well, I had mentioned this earlier in terms of the strategic nature of Virgo, particularly as ruled by Mercury. And this is the card that I mostly have utilized that meaning with, because I think of this. I think of this being the old man there is the one that owns this like manor house. It seems wealthy, it seems rich. Probably the town out there that we can see beyond the archway, built up around this house. I mean, we see the generations, so we see the old man, we see the younger couple, we see the child, as well as the dogs. And so the idea, this comes in, one of the meanings for the card is inheritance, or, passing generational wealth, passing wealth down through generations. I did have a client get this card, and she was asking about money. So I'm like, you're going to get an inheritance. And I don't know what else we were talking about. I know when I drill down on a really specific interpretation, there's usually a combination of factors that makes me say that. I don't normally say that. I mean, it's one of the meanings, but I don't normally jump to that meaning. And she's like, that is very unlikely. I said, that's what I see. And it ended up, her mother had to move in with her that year. We were doing this kind of year ahead financial lookout, and I said, "You're going to get an inheritance." She's like, "Yay, but that's really unlikely." And her mother moved in with her. Like, oh man, sorry that I got it right, but skewed it in a really weird way that you would not have guessed what that actually meant. Um, so, but yeah, those are some of the meanings, and that idea of planning ahead. That old man was really able to manage that wealth, build the wealth, manage it, allow it to be there to pass on to, the implication is that it will last through several generations. Um, and and that's something that is less and less common. Used to be quite common. Back in England at the time of the drawing of this, it was really common for people to inherit, for people of a certain class to inherit just a monthly stipend that they could live on, or an annual stipend that they could live on. Sometimes more generous, sometimes less, but at least they had their basic needs covered. And that's pretty much unheard of nowadays.
Any other comments? Well, I guess that wraps it up then. Let me just go ahead and stop the share here for a second. Our next month, we will, of course, be covering Virgo, not Virgo, but Libra. Our next one is going to be October 4th.
Any final thoughts on our Virgo, or thoughts, questions, takeaways, anything like that from today?
I always find these things so interesting, and just figure all the things that see all the things that I still have yet to learn. So thank you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to have you here, and glad to hear your comments.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no more comments. Just thank you for this. It's always interesting.
Yeah. Glad to have you here as well.
Yeah, thank you both so much. It was really it, like, helped me learn more about tarot and astrology, and it was just very informative and just a lot of fun. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it looks like we've lost our other people. So, yeah, thank you everybody for coming, for participating. Love the comments and the discussions. So yeah, I really appreciate you all. And so, as John said, October 4th. So cool. Yeah, thank you everybody. And we'll see you on October 4th, if not before.